Three, two, one. We live. All right, welcome back to the We Live podcast. I got my religion teacher, Mr. Stowe. Thanks for coming on.
Of course. Happy to be here.
So I'm just going to start off. You're a pretty interesting guy, and I know teaching wasn't your first choice. So just walk me through a story of because
Sure.
I knew, just tell me the story.
Sure, yeah. So I was I went to actually public school. I went to Kenston for high school. And then my parents moved the summer before my senior year of high school, and they moved to Colorado. So it was this big, my older sister was going to Kent State, and then my four younger siblings all moved with my parents. So suddenly, I was the only person in my family because I wanted to finish high school. I didn't want to move my senior year of high school. So I stayed with some neighbors, and during that year, it was I always used to think that I would be the one that would move away. Like my parents would stay here, and then I'd go off to college somewhere, and then come back.
Yeah.
But they moved, so I had this desire to, stay. And so I ended up through my youth group. I went to St. Helen's Church when I was a kid. Met the vocation director for the seminary, and so I thought about being a priest for a while. And part of it was I wanted to study philosophy, which was something I was getting into as a senior in high school. And then another part was just wanting to continue to explore kind of my Catholic faith. So I went to seminary in Cleveland, did my college seminary there. So I went to, it's John Carroll. And then I continued down that path for another few years after that, because for a few years was thinking about do I want to be a priest? And a lot of the feedback I was getting from the people I was working with was we think you'd be a good priest. I thought maybe I'll be a priest. So I was in formation for 8 years. It's a 9-year program, and I was there for 8 years. So I finished my master's degree there too. But really for the last probably 4 to 5 years, I kept asking myself that question of I love my faith, I love the church, I love the priesthood, but I don't think it's actually for me. And so every year I was giving that kind of feedback to the people on faculty at the seminary and saying I love being here, I love praying, but I'm not sure that this is really what God's calling me to. And every year for a while they were saying, well, you're not ready for priesthood yet. That's good. You shouldn't be. It's years away. Let's keep praying with it. And then ultimately, the summer before what would have been my last year there, they kind of said, you have to make this decision. They were talking about, I would have been a deacon that fall, but I withdrew over the summer. So ultimately, I kind of came to a conclusion that just it wasn't sort of God's will for my life. And I came to that conclusion by figuring out that I didn't think it was actually something that I would be able to be super joyful at. I love my friends who are priests. I love the priesthood itself, but I just don't think that it's something that I was kind of made for. So from there, I had a theology degree and no experience with anything, and didn't really know what to do with that degree, what would be useful. And a good friend of mine who had been in seminary with me was at that time teaching at, I think, St. Ed's. And he reached out and said, why don't you think about teaching? I thought, okay, yeah. So I applied at, I think, 11 schools. I got one interview here. And, just because I really didn't have any experience, but they took a risk on me and put me in the classroom, and I really, really enjoyed it, And I think I do an okay job.
Yeah, you do a good job.
Yeah, all right, thanks.
Do you have any regrets, or are you happy that you made that decision?
Yeah, I'm super happy. I went to we move in classes through the seminary. So there were 4 other guys with me that they all ended up becoming priests. So I went to their ordination, a few months after I had withdrawn, and then they continued on and they became priests. And I remember sitting there and praying, and afterwards one of the other priests came up and said, at the end of the Mass, and just said, how did that feel? Being here instead of up there. And I said, I feel really relieved. I really think I made the right discernment here. And from there, it was like, I think I taught for 7 years before, or 6 years before I met my wife. So I got married a year and a half ago now. So I'm super, super grateful. I mean, that was like 7 years of like happy to be teaching, but also like, I don't really know what my vocation is. It's not priesthood. Could be single life for the rest of my life. That could happen. Or maybe someday I'll meet somebody.
Yeah.
I did. So.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, is how you met your wife.
Yeah.
So you, so how did you, when, it's recent, right?
Yeah, we met in 2018 and started dating like the winter of 2018. So we dated for about a year, got engaged, I think for like 10 months, and then we've been married now for about a year and a half. So we met really just at like a party at a friend's house. So we met at a party at a friend's house in the summertime, and we didn't really talk. We just kind of saw each other and we're like, hi. And then we randomly ran into each other again, like I think 3 months later at a Theology on Tap, which is like in Cleveland, there's different churches that will host these, like they'll bring in some speaker, and then it's usually at a bar, so people come and have a drink and listen to a speaker talk about faith. So those happen once in a while, but we met there again, and then her roommate actually gave me my wife's number. Was like, hey, you should call her.
Yeah.
So that's how we met.
And together ever since.
Yeah.
That's exactly how my parents met. Like they said hi to each other, nothing, and then down the road.
Yeah.
It's meant to be.
Yeah, it's meant to be. I don't know.
All right, so I compiled a couple, like not really deep, but some religion questions that I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
So for you personally, like when and how did you find God?
Yeah. Like the first time, or
yeah, like the
okay.
very first time. Time to think about it.
Yeah. So I grew up in a pretty Catholic family.
Yeah.
I'm the second one of 6. I have an older sister, and I have 2 younger brothers, 2 younger sisters. So sister, me, brother, sister, brother. And so we grew up going to church and going to youth group in high school, and like I would go to retreats. When I was a senior, I was one of the leaders for our youth retreat. So it was kind of like my parents were pretty involved with the church. My next door neighbors were they were older. They were the parents of the person who was our youth minister. But they were really good friends of our family. So it was like faith was always part of our lives, like conversations with my parents, conversations with my neighbors. So really just growing up in the midst of it, I think. But ultimately, I think everybody kind of hits a point where even for people who are raised Catholic, it becomes something that like it has to matter to you, you know? So I think that was probably high school for me.
Wait, so you're basically saying like the only way you find God is you're gonna have to want to find God.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah. What do you think?
I don't know, but you said it happened in high school for you?
Yeah. I mean, so I would say like it was something that was really part of my life, you know, elementary school, grade school. I went to public school, so it wasn't like something that I learned about in school.
Yeah.
But high school was probably where it became like, this is something that I want, you know, to be part of my life, to be like, this is what my life is founded on. And eventually got to the point where like in college, which was, you know, seminary, but I think this is still true today. I can't explain myself without talking about how I know Jesus Christ. Like it just doesn't, my life doesn't make sense without God in it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that's a very general answer. Specifically, I'd say like retreats and youth group is where I kind of started to have that awakening or encounter with God.
Yeah, because like for me, like I didn't go to a Catholic grade school.
Yeah.
And the first time I went to mass was like Catholic.
Yeah.
So I don't know, and I've never been to any like of those events. So
Kairos is coming up.
I think I am going this year.
Nice.
So yeah.
April.
And then another question, like, what do you find in the Catholic faith? It's like more of a, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess, so I'll answer that like academically and then personally. Academically, it's something that I've studied for a long time. It's my master's degree is Catholic theology. My undergrad was philosophy, but basically, studying philosophy from a Catholic perspective, being in seminary. So, like, academically, professionally, intellectually, it's always been part of just the way that I approach the world, I guess. And then personally, I don't know that there's a better way to say this than just to say that, like, I'm in love with Jesus Christ. Like, I encounter Christ in the sacraments. I encounter Jesus in, especially now, the sacrament of marriage, like my love with my wife, and our desire and our hope for the future. And I feel, strengthened by and empowered by going to, like, Mass, receiving Eucharist, going to confession. So there's parts of the Catholic faith, especially the sacraments, that I think really helped me to, like, structure my life. At the same time, I know, I was just reflecting on this. So I try to spend like a period a day in the chapel, just because I have free time in the day. And this past period, I was thinking about just how I've come, especially in the seminary, but since then too, especially coming to know Jesus through places of poverty and suffering. So, like, I worked with, like, the homeless in Cleveland throughout college. I went and lived at a homeless shelter in New York City for a summer. So I think there's something about the Catholic faith that is super focused on, like last semester I taught you guys, social justice or social teaching. So, like, finding Jesus where people are poor and suffering. I like that a lot. I mean, I think that helps me to live. What do you think?
I honestly couldn't give you an answer. That's why I wanted to ask you the question.
Sure.
So I honestly cannot give an answer to that. But so I know we talked about this a little bit in class, but I want to, like, know the difference between, like, or how religion and evolution, like, how they coincide, like, with each other.
That's kind of, I mean, it's tough.
Yeah.
Part of it is just the mystery of history. Like, we're talking prehistory, so we don't have, like, direct records. There's a couple of documents that different popes have put out that try to, like, make some sense here. For Catholics, we believe in science, right? So, like, whatever the record of science is telling us, which is evolution, we accept that. The only kind of caveat that I think this was Pope Pius XII maybe gave was, and then Pope John Paul II also said this in the 90s, basically, like, evolution appears to be the way that humanity came about, and, like, the animals in the world and the plants, etc. But at some point, humanity became became rational, had some kind of moment in history, which is prehistory now, so we can't tell exactly when this moment was, but moved from being simply animals to being human beings. And there's a distinction between a human and an animal. Humans are animals, but they're also, like, have the rational soul, and we can think about things, and we can love, and we can plan for the future, and all that. So at some point, there was some kind of transition from simply animal to human. And that moment, God desired and willed and caused to happen. So there's, like, evolution as far as being, like, a mechanism where things develop over time. Totally cool with that. That it is also directed by God and intended and done on purpose. That's, I think, the piece that the church would bring to this, rather than saying, like, because some people argue that therefore everything's just random, like, it's just kind of the result of randomness. But I guess the Catholic and Christian view would be that ultimately everything that exists because of God's will, so it's on purpose, has meaning.
So like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to like understand like,
Yeah.
so like things evolved over time by God's will. So that's how they like.
Yeah, so they're two kind of like, it's strange because we can also look at the fossil record and say, well, there are some evolutionary trails that ended,
Yeah.
right? So like, and I'm not a paleontologist, unfortunately. I'm not like super well versed in this, but there was a guy that came and gave a talk who's a priest, but also a scientist. He was a Dominican. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, talking about like humanity as it exists today. At what point did it move from being apes, like being animals, to being rational? And it looks like, again, I'm going to go off on a limb here because this isn't my expertise, but it looks like humanity as it exists today, which is Homo sapiens, which is man, the knower, is probably like the result of a number of different like ancient hominids, I think, evolving over time and then kind of combining together into what ultimately turns into the Homo sapiens eventually. So this is confusing. So I would say it's develops over time and it's willed by God. That's, I think, would be my claim.
How about like the story of Genesis? Like, does
Sure.
that like completely go against evolution?
Right. So some Christians would say yes. Catholics, though, generally our understanding of Scripture is that it's there are some things in it that are meant to be taken literally, and there are some things in it that are told in mythic form, and there are some things that are symbolic, etc. So it's always communicating truth. It's always true, but it's not necessarily like scientifically true. So the story of Genesis is communicating something true, which is that, I guess kind of what I just said, which is that God creates everything, God does it on purpose, and God makes it out of love, desires, justice, etc. But was it exactly like that?
But like exactly like 7 days
Right.
and exactly all that.
Yeah, probably not. If you read the Catechism, which is this big book of like kind of doctrinal teaching of the Catholic Church, it'll say about Adam and Eve, you are free to believe that this is a literal story, that literally sometime in history there were two people named Adam and Eve. But you're not required to believe that. The story of Adam and Eve is telling us something about God's desire to be in relationship with humanity and about where sin comes from. But it's not necessarily telling us a historical, like, fossil record story.
Okay, yeah, I understand that. It's kind of like off what we were talking about, but I'm not really. Have you personally like ever questioned your faith or
Sure.
anything like that?
I think I've more so felt alone or abandoned by God. And I think it's similar. So I don't think there was ever a time where I guess, asking the question of like, does God, A, exist, B, care about me, right? So those are really foundational questions. And so, especially in the year when I left the seminary, and really for probably a couple of years leading up to that point, I was really struggling with the question of like, is this what I'm supposed to do with my life? And from that question, I was, going to prayer a lot and asking God, is this what you want? Because, God, if you want this, then I'll figure out a way to make it work. And I really, most of my experience of prayer in my life is an experience of silence and just kind of sitting and thinking, God, are you listening? Are you there? Do you care? And I ultimately, I'm still in that place a lot. But I've also come to realize part of what's happening, at least for me in prayer, is that moment of longing to know God, of sitting in the silence and saying, God, I desire to know you and to know that you know me. And I think that is itself prayer. The desire for relationship is already a movement into relationship. So yes, I think it's strange. I don't think that I could get to a point in my life, and it's possible if something really horrible happens, but I don't think I can get to a point in my life where I say to myself, I just don't think God exists. But definitely there have been times, and I'm sure there will be times again, where I feel far from or unknown or unseen by God.
Another thing.
Yeah.
So how many religions? There's thousands of religions.
Yeah.
So how do which are correct?
Yeah.
I don't understand which ones are correct. Are they all is just one? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't even know if you can answer that question, but just I want to hear what you have to say.
Sure. I think I can answer it from the perspective of somebody who is a believer. So I can say from the inside of Christianity, I believe that Christianity is correct. I also teach, I'm teaching this semester, I teach world religions, right? So I try to look at, I'm trying to help you guys look at each one of the religions that we are going to study, which there's only 4 because that we're studying because there's only so much time. And there's tons of religions out there, but we're just looking at some major ones. I'm trying to look at each one with charity and with recognizing the good that's there. So from the outside of each one of these religions, I can only look at it from the outside because I'm a Christian, so I can't look at Islam as a Muslim, and I can't look at Judaism as a Jew, and I can't look at Hinduism as a Hindu, but I can look at it from the perspective of a Christian and say there's really good things in each one of these that we actually share. But the really scandalous claim of Christianity is Jesus Christ is the only Savior. And I say scandalous because it feels a little bit like we're telling, well, I don't know, it more than feels like, but Christianity is telling each of the other religions, regardless of what's good here, you're missing Jesus. He is the center point of history. So I can say that because I believe it. But I also say it knowing that claim isn't necessarily going to be accepted or recognized by everybody else in the world. 'Cause, people who are Muslim are going to say, actually, we believe that Muhammad gives the definitive interpretation of what's right, and Christians say, well, we believe that Jesus gives definitive, and Hindus are going to say, yeah, but we believe that they name a number of gurus. This guy says the right thing, or that guy says the right thing. So it's a great leap into darkness sometimes in faith to say, I find in Christianity something that resonates with what I think is true, and I'm going to jump into it and hope that this is the truth.
That's what you believe in.
Yeah. Well, it is what I believe in. And I want to respect each person who makes that leap into whatever it is they're leaping into, but I'm also very much going to hope that they're leaping into Jesus. So I know it's a scary place to jump into whatever that faith is. But as a Christian, I'm also hopeful that ultimately people will come to know Christ because I think he's the way, the truth, and the life. So it's kind of a weird balancing act to teach this course, to say, I want to respect and recognize the goodness here, but I also want to say Jesus, I think, is right. So yeah, that's kind of a weird, tough place to navigate.
Yeah, that was our question, but that was my last religion question. But going on to stuff about you and other hobbies.
Sure.
You play the guitar?
Yeah, I play guitar. I play a little banjo. I play mandolin. So in college, I played in a band where I played rhythm guitar and played covers of rock songs. And then in grad school, I played in a folk band where I played mandolin.
Mm-hmm.
So
let's see how much. I mean, I don't know how much time we have left, but if you have like a funny like high school story or a college, or if you can't think of a story, maybe like I don't know, talk about like stuff you do outside of school.
Sure.
Or anything.
My wife and I travel a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually a lot, but like I'm a high school teacher, so I got the summers off, so that's nice. Mm-hmm. So like last summer we went to Italy, and I had gone to Italy in college. I spent a semester in Rome. So I went to Italy last summer. Next summer, she and I and her family are going to go to Scotland. A couple summers ago, I went with a friend to Ireland. So I think traveling has been a really great way to spend time and encounter other people and see like the beauty of the world. I've been trying to rack my brains for like a funny story. I can't, like, I have stories that are like, they're funny to me because they happen to me, but I don't know that they're like funny, actually funny.
Like college or like a high school or like I don't know. It's whatever you got.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not I'm not a great storyteller. I don't know.
Or let's just talk about your college. You went to John Carroll, right?
Yeah.
You didn't play any sports? Did you play sports in high school or no?
No, I ran cross country, which some people say is a sport.
Yeah.
I ran a couple marathons in college, but that was just on my own. I don't know. That's what college-wise. I think it's strange to talk about it as college because seminary. Yeah, I took classes at John Carroll, but I lived at the seminary, which is in Willoughby, or I'm sorry, in Wycliffe. And so I lived in a house of like 40 guys that were all thinking about priesthood, but not everybody ended up being priests like me. Most of them didn't actually. So it was a lot of guys in kind of college years trying to figure out like, how do I follow Jesus? How do I follow God? But also trying to live somewhat normal like college life. So, working in the summers and trying to keep ourselves entertained during the school year and, spending time in prayer and going to mass and all that. But, it's kind of it's a weird thing almost shouldn't even call it college. Like it was college, but it was also formation and prayer and stuff like that. But also super like human, like not superhuman, but like just very a human experience. Like we traveled and I played like pickup basketball a lot of times with the other guys, and which is very embarrassing because I'm a terrible basketball player. Are
you still close with all the people that you
lot of them
stay in touch with them and all?
Yeah, a lot of them. Actually, this coming Sunday at St. Ed's High School is a seminarians versus priests basketball game. So a couple of my good friends are playing as they're priests now, but they're playing in the basketball game. So I'm going to that on Sunday. But yeah, I'd say a lot of my closest friends now are guys I was in seminary with. And a lot of the guys that I keep in touch with are guys that became priests. So I'm still trying to think of something funny.
Well, you could talk about what you said you're working on. What are you working on right now?
Yeah, I have started since just moving into my house a couple summers ago, doing woodworking.
Yeah,
which is fun. So Mr. Troja here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a wealth of knowledge. Has loaned me all sorts of tools and thoughts and like directions. But I built a big table. It's like 4 foot by 8 foot. That is our dining room table now. And then I built a 6.5 foot long bench that went with it. And then a couple of weeks ago, I spent way too much time building this like faux mantelpiece.
Mm-hmm.
We have like it kind of looks like this.
I know what you're talking about, like above a fireplace.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. We have like a fake fireplace in our room.
Yeah.
So I built this like fake mantelpiece that goes above it, and we just put pictures on it and stuff. But it took me probably like 20 hours of figuring out how to put 2 pieces of wood like this.
Oh yeah, no, wood's heavy because my dad is he literally just installed one of those yesterday.
Nice.
And he said it was literally like 120 pounds. He had to get it up.
Yeah.
And it's hard. Are you just doing it just as a hobby, or
Yeah,
like,
that's way fancier than what I did. I took two boards. These are 3 over there, and I cut them at a 45-degree angle, and then I put them like this. So it's like it's like an empty space underneath, but it looks like it's a mantelpiece.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's been a lot. I mean,
just as a hobby, right?
Yeah, trying to figure out how to like use my hands and work with some power tools and put stuff on the wall that looks semi okay, and I can point at it when people come over and say, "I put that over there."
And put it together.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Well, I covered everything, so
that's it.
That's it.
We live.
Thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much.